Welcome everyone to today's CSIA webinar series. My name is Colin Hammond and I will be your host today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit professional association with over 500 member companies in 40 countries. Our mission is to advance the practice of control system integration to benefit our members and their clients. Our vision is to ensure that manufacturing and process industries everywhere have access to low-risk, safe, and successful application of automation technology. CSIA membership offers members access to resources needed to attain and exceed business goals. To highlight just a few of our many member benefits, the CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. CSIA's business insurance program offers members an excellent insurance program for business owners, subcontractors, and more. The program includes members from all over the world enjoying the peace of mind that comes with CSIA insurance. Clients in all industries are now seeking integrators with a CSIA certification alongside ISO. They recognize CSIA certified integrators' commitment to industry standards and business acumen. As a result, being certified can shorten the sales cycle. CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is the premier automation guide featuring system integrators and suppliers who provide industrial, manufacturing, and process automation solutions. For integrators and suppliers, it's a place to market their expertise. Clients will find white papers, case studies, capabilities, contact information, and engage in conversation directly with CSIA members. And please follow CSIA's online events calendars for all upcoming webinars, including partner webinars and business webinars. You won't want to miss these opportunities to learn from the comfort of your own office or home. And for more information about CSIA, please visit our website or contact us at info@staff.controlsys.org or 847-686-2245. And at this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Alex. Alex is a technical director at alliantgroup, specializing in the software and technology, government contracting, and architecture and engineering industries. Over the past 7 years, he has worked with over 700 U.S. businesses to help them identify valuable government incentives. In his role at alliantgroup, Alex has helped small and medium-sized businesses claim over $500 million in credits and incentives. And with that, I would like to pass it over to Alex. Welcome, Alex.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and really excited to be speaking again to some of the members of CSIA. Systems integrators are near and dear to my heart because, as you all know, you automate the world, create these custom solutions for your customers, clients, and users that are very incredible in nature and require a lot of expertise and prior industry knowledge. So I'm looking forward to speaking to you all today about some things that are available to other member companies and that we've worked with quite a significant amount of your peers on previously, specific to generating an ability to take some of the areas that you're already focused and functioning in and hopefully result in some tax savings that you can use in order to reinvest into your businesses. Just a high-level introduction to alliantgroup. We're a national tax advisory firm, basically a think tank for credits and incentives. So our mission, our core function is to find ways to help our clients mitigate on tax and hopefully create some technical jobs in the United States throughout that process. We've been around since 2001. Since we were founded, we've completed about 50,000 of these studies. And one of the things that we're incredibly proud of is we've generated about 165,000 jobs by delivering over $10 billion to our clients around the United States. We are also a proud member of the Control Systems Integrators Association. To date, we've worked with CSIA members to claim over $71 million in these credits and incentives. So like I mentioned, we've worked with quite a few of your peers already in the past and very much successfully. So one of the things that is just so exciting about your industry and the things that your businesses are capable of doing is when you're creating a custom solution, right? You go into an end user environment, you're looking at their specification, whether it's a factory, manufacturing facility, or something in between, and they require automation. They have different systems. Some of them are different ages. Some of them don't necessarily speak to each other. They may have some level of software or firmware for some of the systems, maybe not for others. It could be a complete renovation, it could be new construction, or it could be somewhere in between. But this concept of systems integration is something, number one, that's incredibly technical in nature, because there's no step-by-step how to guide to, how do you complete that solution, or how do you implement that system? How do your technicians bring it online and make it operational? And then also service it over time to make sure the functionality and the original intent is delivered as that solution that we talk about. So because of all of those areas, your team, your people truly can be considered experts. And the incentive that we're talking about today, research and development, today in the tax code is looking specifically to incentivize businesses like yours for the technical activity that you already have here in the United States. I always try to start out with an example. This is one of your peers, process control solutions provider, about a $30 million company. Over a period of 4 tax years, they were able to generate almost $1 million in credits. So depending on your area of the country, even assuming you're in one of the larger metropolitan areas, what could you do with $1 million if you were able to reinvest that amount of money back into your firm? I mean, ideally, you could hire, 10 or 11 employees. And right now, what we're hearing from all of your peers is one of the things that everyone is looking to do is to find more people, right? People, their intellectual capacity, the things that they're able to bring to our clients is something that's incredibly important, specifically in our industry, because the people are the true value add. So Congress already has this in place in order to incentivize businesses like yours for the activity that you're already performing, in the hope that then you turn around and use these credits and these tax savings to reinvest in the business and hopefully hire more technical folks and just more people in general to continue growing your business. Now, if you focus in on some of the activities, again, as we go through the presentation, you'll see that these are things that to you may seem very much day to day, but from a tax code perspective, it's exactly what we want to keep here in the United States. Again, I mentioned that intellectual capacity, the ability for your team. It could be based on their engineering experience. It could just be based on their industry experience, but their ability to deliver a customized solution for your customer or end user. This is specifically what we want to keep here in the US, as opposed to allow any level of outsourcing. Now, what are some of the reasons that Alliant Group in general has been successful over the years? We have built a pretty incredible team. We have folks that are on the legislative side, spent time in Congress. We have senators, former governors that are capable of bringing some of this knowledge. And if you want to think about staying at the forefront of where some of these credits and incentives are moving, and truly from an industry perspective, we're able to participate in thought leadership. That's something that we take very, very seriously. We want to make sure that these incentives not only stay in place, but they continue being expanded. One of the very exciting things that's happening right now, obviously we have the election, but further on top of that, there's a couple of pieces of legislation currently on the congressional floor that are specifically meant to further expand on some of these incentives. And these are the folks, people like Rick Lazio, Mark Everson, Stephen Miller. These are the people that day to day are in our Alliant National Office, working with folks on the Hill to make sure that, again, these incentives stay in place and are expanded. Something that's pretty exciting that I just wanted to point out, because of the pandemic, because of the things that all of you all and just the United States in general has dealt with, we've seen that there is an issue with a lot of different supply chains because of some necessity for us to get certain parts from overseas. So one of the concepts that's currently on the Congress floor is to further reward businesses for bringing some of that activity home, and making sure that we're able to better control our supply chain so we can faster deliver some of these solutions that you do to your clients. Now, how do we approach making sure that we bring as much value to you as possible? Well, as we've built our business over the years, again, we've been around since 2001. We're no longer a young company. At this point, we're about 1,000 employees. And the way that we've approached this is by building technical verticals. So throughout the years, we've generated a team of technical experts, and we have folks that literally specialize just with systems integration, that work with automation businesses, solutions providers that are able to go into a particular end user environment and automate their system to the intent that is needed. Sometimes it could be the entire facility, sometimes it could be partial, but these folks will speak your language. We have engineers by background, we have software programmers, software developers. Also, we have PhDs, scientists, agronomists. So any industry that you can think of, we've got about 750 professionals that are a part of our implementation team and that are capable of speaking your team's language and very quickly identifying, do you qualify? If the answer is yes, where are the qualifying areas, and ensuring that per today's tax code, we not just generate a credit, but we do so in a format where we're maximizing value and getting you exactly what's due from a congressional intent perspective. Now, supporting that effort on the enforcement side, we have folks that actually spent time at the IRS, right? Mark Everson, Stephen Miller, Kathy Petronchak, all were at some level IRS commissioners and have a very granular understanding of how the code is intended to function and the methodology that the IRS is looking for to ensure that, again, a business like yours can not just generate, but maximize that credit under today's guidelines, the currently approved methodologies. So our team is able to get that real-time feedback as we go. So whether we're looking at prior tax years or your current year, or even if we're looking prospectively, we can provide you that context that is needed in order to ensure that we're putting you in a place to succeed. And then on the legislative side, like we talked about, we have former congressmen, senators, governors, but on top of that, we have folks that are actually impacting the law. So two people that I'd like to point out, former senior counsels to the Senate Finance Committee, Dean Zerbe, Don Levy, they were there physically when a lot of these changes and regulatory adjustments happened that allow a business like yours to actually succeed. Now, R&D tax credit. So I'm not doing traditional research, no development. How would I qualify? Why would I spend time on this? Is this even relevant to our business? Well, the short answer is absolutely. Why would you not do this if there's a possibility for us to generate some immediate infusion of cash back into the company, especially in today's environment? Now, when we're looking at R&D, it is not what you would think about as traditional research. So when you think of the term lab coats, pipettes, you're in a laboratory setting, some level of discovery possibly, that's not what the tax code is looking to incentivize today. Section 41 has been rewritten many different times since the early 80s. And today, as a result of first, the mass exodus that we had of manufacturing during the 90s, and then again during the 2000s, similar concept, except now it's with engineering. And not just traditional engineering, but anything STEM. Folks that are capable of science, technology, engineering, math, that are doing things, principles of the hard sciences or software sciences. That is what Congress today wants to incentivize. And so if your company or your employees have activities that we can consider technical in nature and tie those back to your projects, this is where the credit is derived from. And that's why a business like yours could qualify. It's those technical employees. Now, why would the government or the IRS want to incentivize us for things that we're doing every day, right? It's not necessarily out of the ordinary. We're approaching each project, as needed, but it's not necessarily different. Well, again, it's important to note that the credit today is a jobs incentive. So if you have people that at any level are technical in nature or capable of these integration activities, the idea is that Congress wants you to keep that here as opposed to allowing any level of outsourcing. We don't want the technical ability and intellectual capacity to all go overseas. Traditionally, we saw this a lot with places like India or China or other areas of Southeast Asia. But in the last 5, 10, 15 years, now you have even the Eastern Bloc in Europe, the places like the Ukraine, like Lithuania, which have incredibly high intellectual capacities and are willing to do similar things from an engineering, from a programming perspective, but for significantly less. So the concept is, in order to ensure that the United States as a whole, as a country, stays at the forefront of innovation, that we keep folks that are capable of these activities here. So again, if you're a business and you have those people, most likely there is some credit. What we need to figure out and figure out as quickly as possible is what the magnitude of that credit is, and how do we make sure that we bring these tax savings to you. Okay, specifically for systems integrators. So let's talk about your business. What are we looking for? So if you think about the ability to not just attract, but retain talent, what we hear, and again, I have a lot of experience and passion specifically for systems integration companies because we've worked with so many over the years. What I hear time and time again is that employees leave to go to one of your competitors for cents on the dollar. So this conceptually is meant to bring an influx of cash into your business, so maybe you're able to retain that talent, or depending on the level of credits, again, you're able to hire more. Also, if you have a necessity to invest in new equipment, if you would like to invest in new programs, machines, depending on specifically what type of systems integration you're doing. But even if you want to simplify and for example, you have 50 employees, they need new iPads, this is an avenue for you to be able to pay for that and not necessarily have to worry about taking dollars away from other areas of your budget that you've already predefined. The second piece is competition. Your peers are currently capturing this, and we've worked with quite a few other CSIA members. So in order to stay competitive, it's something that if you want to think about from your perspective, you should be doing too, because you absolutely qualify, right? If you're part of this organization, most likely at some level, your people are technical in nature. That's not something that necessarily is far-fetched. The whole concept of integration, you don't have a step-by-step guide of how to make these systems communicate or function as a whole, of how to take these different pieces of equipment and help them work together as one combined solution. So the idea is Congress wants to incentivize you so you can continue doing that and continue innovating. And as technology goes forward, which is happening at a more and more rapid pace every day, you can continue to stay on the forefront of your industry. So a couple more examples. This is a automation provider. So a company, again, whose whole core function is to provide automation solutions. And this business, a little bit larger than the first one that we talked about 75 million in revenue. They got almost $1.5 million in credits. Again, this is over 4 years. But if you want to think about this, one of the things that I like to point out is it's not revenue specific. So even though this business is not 3 times the size of the first company that we looked at, they still were able to generate almost 3 times the credit because it truly is a jobs and activity-based incentive. So if you take a look at some of these activities, these folks were doing things from a preparation design perspective in CAD, using modeling, figuring out what is the best solution. So one of the things that makes a systems integrator very unique is when you go into your end user's environment, on day one, you may not necessarily know what that final solution will look like. When you implement it, turn it on, and bring it online, and that's okay. The idea that you're suggesting alternatives as you go, that you're making changes or adjustments to that initial concept, because when you get on site, maybe things don't happen as originally planned. And in general, what you do is not an exact science. Things don't necessarily always go according to plan, which is where your people's expertise and true value add comes into play, because they're able to troubleshoot, they're able to figure out where in the system, the order of operations and the progression is that breakdown happening, how do we fix it, and how do we make sure that moving forward, it continues to be operational. This is an industrial controls integrator. So we use an example. This is a real example of another business specifically focusing on the auto industry. And if you look at people that are basically supporting a manufacturing facility of this size, there's two things that go into play. Number one, in order to design a solution or put together a custom suggested solution for a facility like this, there's going to be multiple layers of preparation, right? The pre-implementation or pre-construction process, if you will, when you're physically going to install the system. Also, depending on the equipment, the solution itself can become very expensive and very quickly, because if you have this level of automation, robotic arms, different control panels that you have to put into place, if you have the actual material handling and moving system. So from conveyor perspective, depending on the weight of the equipment or the product that they're moving, again, they could become very large and very expensive quickly. And what happens is the manufacturer or the fabricator or your customer, they're going to lean on you and your team and your team's expertise in order to figure out, how do we do this? And that's precisely, again, what we're looking at from an activities perspective. So I just want to run you through different employee types for a business like this. So it actually starts at the very, very beginning of the process. Most businesses like yours, what we see is you have technical salespeople. You're upfront individuals that are either estimating or reaching out to prospective clients. Sometimes it could be even owners, depending on how you're structured, right? If you're a flow-through entity, it could be the people that originally started the business. But when you're speaking to a client or a prospective end user, what you're talking about is, based on your industry knowledge, analyzing their need, figuring out their pain point, and then suggesting a couple of options that you could and your team could put into place in order to automate or make their particular environment more automated in general and create a custom solution. So because that conversation at the very beginning is not something where you're necessarily opening up a catalog and just saying, point to what you want, all the way from the beginning, we can start to qualify some of that activity. And then as you go down the line to your engineering team or your pre-implementation folks that are going to actually figure out what that final solution is going to look like. What are the order of operations? What manufacturers do you use in order to make sure that in that environment, it's going to work properly and that system is going to be able to function together? And then again, obviously to the technicians and all the way through to the people that are turning these systems on and possibly even servicing, depending on what that looks like. So again, this is an example of a business a little bit larger than the one we just looked at, about 100 million in gross receipts, and over a period of 4 tax years, almost $5 million in credits. So this could be very powerful very quickly. And again, it doesn't matter what size your company is. Systems integrators that are $20 million in revenue all the way up to $100 million in revenue absolutely qualify and can generate credits. What we need to do is figure out, specific to your business and how you approach it, how you work with your customers, what's the magnitude of the tax savings for you? And if there's anything that we can do in order to help, obviously we'll do that for you. Here's an example of a quote from another CSIA member that has worked with us in the past. So just wanted to read this for everybody. We had never considered that our work is considered research and development. Like we talked about earlier, right? This whole term R&D can be a little bit confusing. Nor had we realized that an incentive like this is to reward businesses like ours was even available. We decided that at the very least, it was a conversation worth having with the Alliant Group to assess the potential value. So the reason that we're pointing this out is what we can do in regards to helping a business like yours is just a brief conversation. We like to start out with some preliminary diligence. We have other technical directors like myself that spend 100% of our time just talking to business owners to figure out, hey, is this something that could also work and be helpful to you and your team? If the answer is yes, great. We'll explain how and why you're eligible and what you need to do in order to ensure that you take advantage of this value that's available to you from a congressional intent perspective. Or if you don't qualify, we'll explain what you can do prospectively, future tense, to put yourself in a position to capture these credits moving forward. Again, R&D Section 41 specifically, it's a permanent part of the tax code. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, not are they just talking about keeping it in place because it's so important, but also possible areas of expansion. My understanding is that this presentation will be available to all of you after the fact. This is a quick video from another CSIA member that provides some background on his experience. Chris Terry started working with us some years back, and he was so impressed and excited about the value that we were able to bring to his company that he actually said, you know what, I want to provide some context to my peers about how and why, number one, a controls integrator or a systems integrator like yours could qualify. And then number two, what his specific experience was, so that way you have that context going into the process. So I understand that we have a couple of questions. So I just want to turn it back over to Jennifer for a few minutes, and I will do my best to answer as directly and with as much context as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing all that really wonderful, great information. First question we have teed up is, I don't have proper time tracking. Can I still take the R&D tax credit?
Got it. Okay, so time tracking. When you think of time tracking in general, historically, what comes to mind is like an engineering or an architecture company who has, a system like a Dell Tech where they are tracking sometimes to the minute how they're spending their time because it's directly tied to their billing. Now, from a perspective of generating an R&D credit, time tracking is great, but it is not mandatory and or necessary in order for our teams to go in and generate a credit and still calculate a credit on your behalf. The reason for that is the current approved methodology is actually a project-based approach. So what the tax code asks for us to do is to create a nexus between your projects and what your people are doing. So our team, again, because it has experience in your industry, will work backwards and through an interview process, take a look at some example projects and work backwards to figure out those allocations of time and how your people are, number one, spending their time from a qualified perspective. Number two, just as important, what areas of their day do not qualify. We have to show both. If you want to think about it, it's an unbiased technical explanation of what you've already done. So great question, but directly responding, time tracking is not mandatory.
Got it. Thank you, Alex. What if they get paid for their work? One question is, if I get paid for my work, am I still eligible to take the R&D credit?
Well, I very much hope you get paid for your work. I hope that none of you are working for free, especially in today's environment. Congress also wants you to get paid for your work. There is nothing in the tax code that says if you get paid, you're automatically not eligible for this. In fact, it's the opposite. Again, the idea is that this is a activities-based incentive. So we have to figure out what are your people doing and what are they getting paid for. What happens is when you're working in an environment where you're going into a project and you are taking on some level of inherent risk associated with the work, what that means is when your team goes in and estimates and explains, this is what a solution could cost, this is how much it's going to cost us to put this into place, our quality control attorney will take a look at those agreements And what we've seen is the majority of CSIA members and your peers usually work on a negotiated basis, which means at least some portion of your work is pre-negotiated bid. So you have a fixed cost that you're going in. Under that scenario, the way that the tax code looks at this is you're taking on significant risk with delivering that system. So because of that, again, Congress looks at it and says, you're taking on risk associated with performing your day-to-day activity. If they're technical in nature, then you can absolutely generate a credit, and it's okay that you're being paid. So great question, Jennifer, but again, not something that's going to stop us from calculating a credit.
Awesome, great. Another question. I'm currently claiming, is it typical for the credit to remain the same each year? I'm not sure if you had addressed that earlier or not.
Yeah. So I hate to ask a question back, but is it typical for a business to remain the same size year over year?
Good point.
Usually
point.
The answer is no, right? There's ebbs and flows, and business is very much cyclical. What we see is there are years, and unfortunately right now, 2020 has been interesting to say the least. And a lot of businesses are not necessarily on an upward trajectory. They're more in a down cycle. And you know what? We've heard the exact opposite too, that there are certain companies that are incredibly busy and they can't find enough people. In general, though, if you want to think about this, if you're taking a credit and it's the exact same amount every year, or let's say, based on today's conversation, you're wondering, am I leaving anything on the table? Is there a possibility of enhancement? What we see is when Alliant Group comes in, on average, especially for a systems integrator, a business that's a member of CSIA, we find at least 2 to 3 times more in credits because we have the industry expertise. So if you've taken a credit and it hasn't really increased as you've grown, or if you're wondering, is there a possibility that I can generate more? Reach out. We'll have a brief 15-minute conversation. If the answer is yes, we'll absolutely explain that. And if no, we can provide you that context as well.
Okay. Another question coming through, does my entity type matter if I can claim R&D? I think you had mentioned S Corp, C Corp, partnership.
So the entity type does not matter. What goes into play is how the credits will be used. If you are a C corporation where tax is paid or received at the entity level, then this is something that would go to offset the company's tax liability. So if you have taxable income at the end of the year, the credits can be used as a dollar-for-dollar reduction of your company's tax liability. If you're structured in a flow-through nature, so whether it's an LLC, filing as an S corporation or a partnership, if you're structured literally as an S corporation or a partnership, what will happen is the credits are generated at the company level and then flow through just like anything else on the K-1 directly to the owners or partners. And that's where the credits are actually used. It's to offset the owner's tax liability in that example.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Well, if there are any more questions after the fact, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I believe my contact detail is on the screen, but also in general, if you just reach out to Alliant Group, we have technical directors in all areas of the country that can help. And we truly are passionate about helping small to mid-sized businesses. Hopefully, at least some of that came off and came through during today's conversation. So if there's anything that we can do, any questions that we can answer, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're absolutely happy to, and we'll do our best to provide as much context as we can, again, to make sure that you as a business are constantly putting yourself in a position to succeed. So thank you so much. And Violetta, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much for this informative discussion, and thank you all for attending. We hope you found this webinar very informational, and a recording of this webinar will be available for viewing at the end of the week, so please be sure to check the CSIA events calendar for all upcoming webinars and events, and have a great day. Thank you so much.